Good morning and good evening. I'm April from University of Southern California. First, I would like to welcome audience in Zoom and live streaming platforms to our 135th USC event. With today's topic, we are heading a new stage of 2024 and the first session of USC Rossier School of Education for our audience. We are so excited to bring you a more practical guidance for aspiring teachers who are passionate about becoming effective language instructors. To help you look ahead being a professional teacher to teach English as a non-native speaker. Please join me to give a warm welcome to today's speaker from USC Rossier School of Education, Heidi Taylor. She is the Assistant Director in the Office of Admissions and Scholarships at USC Rossier. Welcome, Heidi. And also, we encourage you to bring your thoughts and comments in the chat and give you the Q&A part in the last 15 minutes after presentation. And the webinar will be recorded, and kindly remind to mute yourself for Zoom audience. And next, I will pass it over to Heidi.
Thank you, April. Hi, everyone. As April said, my name is Heidi Taylor, and it is so nice to virtually meet you, whether it's early in the morning or late in the evening. Here in Los Angeles at 7 p.m. at night, I just want to welcome you to our MAT-TESOL webinar regarding credential versus non-credential track. So I serve as the Assistant Director here in the Office of Admission and Scholarships at USC Rossier. If you have any questions while you're applying to the USC MAT-TESOL program, I will be your point of contact. So if you have any questions, big or small, I can certainly communicate, whether that be via Zoom or if email is your preferred way of communication, I'm here to help. Before we really dive into the purpose of this webinar, which is the credential versus non-credentialing track within the MAT-TESOL program here at USC Rossier, I quickly wanted to go over the agenda for the next hour. I'm basically going to highlight the USC Rossier mission. So if anyone hasn't had the opportunity to read our mission statement, don't worry, I will highlight it here in this presentation. We'll then talk about the different credentialing tracks that we offer here at USC Rossier. We'll specifically dive into the California teaching credential, how to apply, and then finally a brief overview of the timeline if interested in the credentialing track. So here on this slide, you will see a short piece of our mission statement at USC Rossier. And I would encourage you all, if you haven't had the opportunity to do so already, to read our mission statement by scanning the QR code on the slide, as it really is a driving force behind the work in which we're doing here at USC Rossier, whether that be your fieldwork placement, the faculty and staff in which you interact with, or the curriculum which is implemented within the program. But for the purpose of today's presentation, our mission is to prepare leaders to achieve educational equity through practice, research, and policy. So what that really means within the MAT-TESOL program is that every student, regardless of zip code or where they're from around the world, deserves a quality education. So if that is something that aligns with your professional goals, USC Rossier could really be a fantastic place to pursue your graduate studies. And again, I would encourage you to all read the mission statement in its entirety if you haven't had the opportunity to do so already. So, a popular question asked for the program is about the credential versus non-credential track within the TESOL program. This is an option you have once admitted into the program. So we've broken it down to give you an overview of the credential track. We're going to look over the big picture of what it is so you understand the differences between coming into the MAT-TESOL program and walking away with your degree versus also pursuing the credential track while in the program. So in the next couple of slides, what I'm going to focus on is what exactly is the track and what is the California World Languages Credential, which is the actual item that you work towards on this track. The MAT-TESOL credential track is an additional option pathway in the MAT-TESOL program. So if you've looked into the program, you might have already seen the different courses that make up the program of study and the courses you would take for this program. The credential track is an add-on to the existing program, and it's optional, of course. We give you such a strong base in the MAT-TESOL program for teaching speakers of their languages. That's really a strong base. And on top of that, the faculty designed additional courses, experiences that you have in working in actual classes, in classrooms, in California public schools. So you get it on the field experience portion of seeing the master teachers. There's a lot of testing requirements, documentation requirements. So those are all sort of the things that go with this optional credential pathway. Again, it's not required. It's something you would have to opt into and has its own application process if you wanted to do it. So everything that I'm going to talk about in items of what makes up the credential track is based on the state of California's state requirements for teacher licensure. So it's a very specific program track that's designed so that we can meet the California state standards for teachers in this particular state. There's a bit more detail of exactly what this looks like. If you've seen the courses that we offer for MAT-TESOL on our website, if you opt into this credential track, it means 2 additional classes on top of the degree program of study. So you would have more classes on top of that. And I'm not going to read the titles of the classes, but there you'll see the word clinical practice. And that's because these additional classes tie directly to you being out in the field in another class, in another teacher's classroom, a teacher that has the credential that you're going to earn, that is teaching the language and students that you're going to be teaching if you get the credential. So the additional classes you take for the credential that you're going to earn is that is teaching the language and students that you're going to be able to teach if you get the credential. So the additional classes that you take for the credential are very much tied to enhancing your experience in the field, which is a state requirement to make sure you have hours in the field. We get a lot of questions about these classes in terms of how many total units more. You'll see that here on the slide that it's 2 units for each of them. So that makes a total of 4 units to whatever information you've received about the program. So just add that on it. The programs office gets a lot of questions like, so I can do them right away, and you actually can't, because in the credential track, you need the bulk or the base of the program, which is a fixed course sequence, and the courses they can only be taken after you get a little further into your actual degree courses. So what that means is once you're entering your 3rd semester of the program, that's when you would start taking these classes in consecutive order. And you'll see in a few slides a visual representation of what I'm talking about. Here you can see what that means for your timeline while in the program. For example, if you're admitted to the fall 2024 MAT-TESOL cohort, there are designated courses you're going to be taking each semester, classes that you're scheduled to take. If you decide to apply into the credential track, then you begin to take your additional classes, one in your last fall semester and one in the spring. Since you have these additional requirements in classes, you actually end up having to stay 1 more semester longer to complete your program. When you say, I really want to do this credential program, it gets added to your master's degree. So you get both at the same time. Sometimes we get questions like, oh, well, can I get the master's degree when I'm done with my classes in the fall, and then my credential when I'm done with my last credential class in the spring? And it doesn't work that way. Once you say you want the credential, we tie that to your master's, and you get both when you complete your credential class. And that doesn't mean you're here 1 semester longer, but I'm sorry, and that does mean that you're going to be here one semester longer, but it aligns really nicely with the university graduation and commencement because that happens in the spring. So that gives you a sense of the timeline of when you're going to start taking the additional courses. Again, it's 2 additional courses, so it's a total of 4 units. So again, even though it's not a lot of classes, because it's a state credential and that's what you're working towards, there is a lot of other requirements that come with that. And that's what I want to talk about, just so you understand the state requirements. This track is designed to give an opportunity for TESOL students who want to earn a California-based teacher credential. And you're going to see California a lot because in the United States, every state in the country has its own way of saying what a teacher is qualified to become a teacher and teach in their public schools. So the credential track here is very much that. The end goal is for you to be able to obtain a California teaching credential. Everything that the programs office is going to ask of you to do and everything you experience during the credential track meets the state commission standards for teachers. That's how the faculty designed the program. That's how fieldwork team work to make sure that they put you with the right teacher in the right school to support you on this track. Because there's a lot of things the programs office have to make sure that they support you in doing, so that the state says, you know what, this person is ready to be a teacher in the state of California. So on the slide, you'll see the actual title of the credential, Preliminary 2042 Single Subject Credential in World Languages. And I know this seems pretty kind of strange, but especially if you're interested in the California credential, we think it's important that you start understanding the language that goes with state credentialing because there's a lot of specific requirements for that. The title of the credential is a single subject credential in world languages. Now, that doesn't mean that your credential allows you to teach all the world languages. No, it goes with a specific language specialization. So you would have a single subject credential in world languages for Spanish. So for example, if Spanish was a target language that you want to become a teacher to teach, it could also be Mandarin or Korean. So there's different language options, and you would have to identify a target language for your credential, and the programs office would ask you that early on if you're interested in that. An important note about this specific California credential is that it's typically used by schools to hire people in the higher grades. So in the United States, we have elementary school, middle school, and high school. And so typically the positions that the schools will require to teach world languages in one of these languages tends to be typically in high school and sometimes middle school, depending on the school. So that's just an important thing to know because I know some students say, I really want to teach in elementary school. And I'm not saying that there's no way that can happen, but in California public schools with this credential, it's really geared towards teaching the older students because that's where focused language instruction happens. This next slide gives you a sense of where do people use this California credential. It's a California credential, so this credential is absolutely required if you want to teach in a California public school. There's no way to obtain a teaching position in a California public school that's K through 12 if you don't have a California teaching credential. That's important to know because if your goal is to live in California and you want to teach in a public school, then you need a credential. Across the nation, different situations, we have a lot of private schools, and California private schools may or may not require a credential. It really depends on the sort of institution and organization. I know we've seen a trend, for example, with religious Catholic schools starting to require the California teaching credential. Not all schools do, so that is something to consider when you're thinking about where are you hoping to teach. That will help you figure out if this makes sense for you or not. Within the United States of America, Every state, just like California, has their own set of standards of what requirements deem a teacher able to teach in the state. Every state in the United States has that. Just because you have a California teaching credential doesn't mean you can show up to New York and say, okay, great, I got my credential in California, let me go teach in New York. New York will say, that's great, we're glad you have a credential somewhere else, but as New York, we have our own standards to meet the New York standards. That's always important to note, because while our students, when they do have a California teaching credential, can go to another state, and because they already have a credential, they have an easier time processing a new credential in that state. It's not a one for one. So it's not like if you get a credential here in California, you could teach in any other state without having to do the additional work. And then nationally and internationally, we have a lot of educational agencies, whether they be governmental, nonprofit, whatever they require for you to be a teacher or work with them. It varies greatly. That is something that's always important for you to know if you have a California teaching credential. Where are you really able to teach? In terms of where it's required, it's absolutely required for California public schools. And it could benefit you potentially in other types of jobs. But it's really a California public school that is going to say, you have to have this credential. So as we move on to the next slide, we know it's an optional track. We know that there's additional steps to take. We know what you get out of the additional track is getting a California state credential, where you could teach with different types of schools and who may require it or not. But then what does it actually mean, right? What is required for you to actually be successful on the MAT-TESOL credential track? That's what we will review in the next slides. Remember that when you apply to the MAT-TESOL program, you are not saying whether or not you're on the credential or the non-credential track. You're first applying to the program to be admitted, not worrying about these different requirements. But they come in once you say you want to come to USC. We can connect you with the team, or once you're here, the programs office can go through the timeline I'm going to show you here. I want to make sure that you all know there's a difference between your application into the MAT-TESOL program and that there's a separate application for this credentialing track, which I'll show you later. But again, it's something that you do later on in the program. So essentially, everyone who's admitted into the MAT program is on the non-credentialing track. And then if you want to pursue the credential, there's additional steps. What you see on this slide are all the requirements that you'll have to do on the MAT-TESOL credential track. The ones that are in the yellow box are the ones that you need to complete as you apply with programs office to get into the credential track. And that's because there's a lot of requirements that the state sets. And so to set you up for success, we know there's some things that the state says you absolutely have to do before a fieldwork team puts you in a school to work with the teacher and children to learn from them. Everything in yellow is what I'll go over in detail in the next slide. But I thought it was important for you to see that everything that's in the green box are still additional requirements that you also have to do if you get into the credential track, even as you're taking the classes. So I always think it's a good visual to know, because anytime we say, okay, there's a lot of requirements, just to be able to see them and know that you will still be doing your MAT-TESOL degree courses, and all of this is on top of that, okay? Again, these are additional requirements that the programs office would want to make sure you know about ahead of time to set you up to be successful on. You'll see that there's 3 that are highlighted here in the yellow box, and I'll talk a little bit more about them on the next slide. The certificate of clearance, the basic skills, and the subject matter requirements, or things that the programs office will ask for up front when you apply to get into the credential track. And those are the three that are the most time consuming and challenging for students, that take a little more work. But the first big step is to be admitted into the MAT-TESOL program. Again, this is an optional pathway. You don't get immediately admitted into this credential track. Our goal in pointing all of this out early on is so you could better understand some of the highlights of this additional pathway, because there are quite a bit of additional requirements, as you can see. So even as you get admitted to the program, we want to front load this information now, because we want to make sure that if this is something that you want to do, we can give you as much heads up and time to make sure that you can prepare and do everything that is required. Requirements to apply to the credential track. Those who are eligible to apply to get onto the credential track already have to be an admitted and enrolled MAT-TESOL program student. So once you've registered for your classes, students also need to be in good program and academic standing. So what that means for the programs office is not just that you're earning good grades and meeting GPA requirements for the university and the program, but also your interactions are positive with faculty, staff, and classmates. You're being proactive in your communication. These are things that they really keep in mind, because to become a California licensed teacher and a licensed teacher in any other state in the country, you're held to different standards. We want to make sure that we know that you can be successful. The next two bullets, the basic skills and subject matter, are two of the big state requirements that we have. There's a lot of ways to fulfill these requirements. Again, a lot of detail because it's a California license. It's a state license for both these options. Basic skills is a state of California requirement to say that every teacher in California has the basic skill set in reading, writing, and arithmetic. And so there's different ways to fulfill that. And the programs office has all that information. So once you decide to add on this track, they can provide you all that. But the most popular option that students take is a standardized exam option called the CBEST. It's the most common that students take. It's a testing option. Our students tend to do really well with that one. And the other requirement is subject matter. It's the state saying that they need to know that as a teacher, you would have the content and the knowledge about the subject that you will be getting your credential. So in this case, it would be your language of choice for the world languages credential. And again, there is a standardized exam option for that. And it's multiple tests depending on which language you choose, and there's other ways to fulfill that as well. The tuberculosis screening is always something that the programs office needs to make sure you have. The fieldwork team works very closely with you on that, because to be able to visit California schools and to sit in with children, you need to make sure that you're negative tuberculosis, also known as TB, because it's highly contagious. The clinical field experience agreement is a really important form that you'll be receiving from the admissions team and fieldwork team once you get admitted. This outlines all your responsibilities that you agree to when you're going to be out in the field working with teachers and students. And the one that you see bolded here is the one that we see the most students take the longest to do and have challenges. We want to put it up there and be upfront and be transparent. And it's basically obtaining a certificate of clearance that is basically a state background check, where they need to make sure that you're clear and safe to work with children, school-age children. In order to apply for that certificate of clearance from the state, you absolutely need to have a United States Social Security number. There's no way to obtain a certificate of clearance. There's no way for the state of California to do a background check with you and check your fingerprints and everything they have to do if you do not have a Social Security number in the United States. Just like the application you filled out, that you were filling out or thinking about filling out for admission to the MAT-TESOL program, you will be applying for the credential track, and they have a deadline to meet within that credential track. Here is a visual of what this timeline I just talked about looks like. This is just a snapshot of once you're admitted into the MAT-TESOL program. This is the timeline the program's office follows from the minute that they know that you're an enrolled student. They start following up with all of this information in a lot more detail than I'm giving you now, so that you have everything you need so that you're fulfilling the requirements. If you really want to get onto the credential track, they're giving you as much time as possible before that March 2025 application, the application due date for them. So every year it's always the same. It's always in March once you're enrolled. That's usually when they require application for all those first requirements. Then they take time to review that, not just with faculty and the staff, but they look at all the applications, and then they let students know who are going to get admitted into the track that they're admitted. And then since you don't start taking your classes for the credential until your last semester of degree courses, then that's the timeline that you see. It's a very lengthy timeline, especially since we're starting now to give you this information. But again, it's because we want to make sure that you have as much time as possible to think about, explore, research, and really consider whether this credential track is something that really piques your interest, so that the program's office could be as supportive as possible in helping you meet the goal of applying if you're interested. So just a few takeaways that the program's office wanted to share in supporting their current students on the track, those that have graduated with their credential, those that are wondering right now, their current cohort, whether they're going to follow with the credential. They see these 3 areas of inquiry come up, and they're really helpful. So I wanted to share them with you now so that you can start thinking about that. If you're wondering, why would I do it? Or if this sounds really great, having a credential looks great on my resume. Some things to consider. Ultimately, where do you want to teach? We see teachers who are lifelong career teachers, and they've taught in various places. Not all public schools, not all private schools. So it's an important question to consider for you to reflect on. What are your goals as a teacher? What are different places that you want to be able to teach? Because I think that it'll be very helpful when it comes to this California credential option. Another question is, how will having this California teaching credential specifically help you with your professional goals? Most of the time, students really want to try to stay in California and teach in public schools long term. So even if they don't get jobs in public schools right away, they know it's something they want to do. Great, then absolutely this is the track for you. Really reflecting on, why would a California specific credential be helpful? And as you're thinking about and exploring schools and thinking about your career goals, even having conversations with types of organizations or schools that you've really been interested, and be like, oh, I would really love to be a teacher here. Have that be a point of inquiry. What kind of credentials or what kind of things really help teachers be successful here? And the last one is, are you able and willing to fulfill all the additional state requirements? If you remember that visual, there's quite a bit of them. We try to provide as much information and guidance as we can for you, but we're not the ones that can fulfill those requirements. Those requirements do take additional planning time, money processing. So because it's such an important investment, we just want to make sure that anyone who's considered this track really thinks about their plan to be able to fulfill all those requirements. But again, the first step to becoming a credential or non-credential student is to apply to the MAT-TESOL program. So you'll see on this slide the application checklist. Our MAT-TESOL application right now is open for our fall 2024 start. Our on-campus MAT-TESOL program has only one start date every year, and it's always in the fall. I won't go through each of these specific items, as that is not the purpose of this particular webinar, but I do want to note that the application right now is open. In terms of application deadlines, we are right up to our regular deadline. So our upcoming regular deadline is February 15th. So it will be here right before you know it. If you're in the midst of filling out an application for our program, just note again that our next deadline is February 15th. This means all of your application materials need to be uploaded into the application, including your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, along with the application being submitted. The application will remain open until our final deadline on June 1st. So whether you apply in regular or final deadline, you have the same chance of admission. But those that apply in the first two deadlines do have internal limited merit-based scholarship priority. In terms of next steps, of course, you can feel free to schedule a one-on-one consultation with myself if you want to take this conversation offline. If you want to explain your specific situation, or if you have more pinpointed questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Begin working on your application if you haven't started. For anyone interested in financial aid, you can complete the FAFSA, research private scholarships, and apply. So on this slide, you will see my email address. So if you have any questions after this webinar, please feel free to send me an email. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. Additionally, if you're interested in a recording of this webinar, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to push the recording your way. I hope this presentation has provided clarity of whether or not the credential track is the right track for you, depending on your career goals and what you're hoping to get out of our program. So thank you for joining today's webinar. And as we all say here at USC, fight on.
Thank you, Heidi, and for very informative sharing with us about the California credential, for teaching position and about the MAT-TESOL program. And now let's move to our Q&A part, and we already have many questions coming in our Zoom. So let's see for the Zoom questions first. And the first question is asked about what is the salary range for teaching at the public school in California?
That's those vary. So I believe a credentialed teacher can start at, it varies in the district. That's an easy, you can Google it and just say, what is the average credential teacher salary? The last I checked, I believe it was at $70,000 to $80,000 to start for a teacher.
Thank you. And the next one is will the same process apply for this year to apply for the credential track? I think this audience want to know, you just show us the date of the timeline to apply for the credential. So is it every year the date of every step is the same? It's the same
so
date?
Every year the program's office will inquire again once you're admitted into the program. Your academic advisor, the director will reach out to you and find out if this is the track you want to do. And yes, that timeline that I did show, am I still sharing my screen? Or no?
Yes, maybe we can go back to the
Yeah, I was
slide.
going to show. So this timeline here, can you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this timeline here is always the same every year. Since we are a cohort-based model, once you're admitted into the program, you're enrolled and you're starting your classes in November. And I'm using the example of this upcoming year if you get admitted. You give your intent to apply, and then you have that in-between time to complete all the pending application requirements. Because again, as I explained, they take time. So you'll work directly with your academic advisor, the TESOL director, her name is Doris, the director of fieldwork, her name is Debbie, and then faculty chair and faculty of the MAT-TESOL program will look over your application, and that is when the application is due if you are interested in getting into the credential track. If you don't get in, it's okay, sometimes it happens, you will still stay earning your degree to receive your Master of Arts in Teaching for the TESOL program. So again, this is optional, and if you don't get admitted, it's probably because of certain paperwork or documentation that didn't make it in time. So again, this is something that you will discuss with your academic advisor once you are enrolled and admitted into the program.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you. And the next question is asked by Lin Yu Yang is about, is there any scholarship opportunities and will students get paid during field work or internship? Thank you.
So the scholarship opportunities, yes, there are limited merit-based scholarships for you just to get into the MAT-TESOL program. Email me, I could send you a link to external private scholarships, but there are internal ones that the review committee will look at. And if you are a competitive applicant and they see that we take a holistic review approach when we review applications, you will be awarded one of the limited merit-based scholarships at the time of admission to the MAT-TESOL program. If you start, and your question about paid, none of these, when you are a candidate to be a teacher, you are not going to get paid to do your student teaching or field work. Even while you are in the program, I believe you will be doing some observation hours. None of these are paid. So there are no paid internships. Everything is basically you going into classrooms to learn from teachers and students and prepare you on how to be a teacher once you are a credentialed teacher. So no, they're not paid.
Thank you. And the next one is asked about, I think it's from the slides, there is EDTPA. What does this letter stands for? Is it, from the presentation you just mentioned about this?
Was it on one of the slides? I'm trying to think which one. I don't recall.
Is it a short for the name of
There's a lot of acronyms. There are a lot of acronyms. There are a lot of things that are they shorten up into acronyms. So I don't know which one it could have been where I showed you what that meant. I don't recall and talking about that. So if let me put my email up again. Send me an email with that question, please. I don't know where I said that or where they saw that. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. And this audience, you can also contact private message us and we can look it up for this abbreviation for you.
Yeah.
And the next one is asked by Julie Choi. I am aware the title of the credential is to teach world language. Is it possible to get a credential of another title?
So you can add on to the credential, but what you're getting is a preliminary credential. So it's easier to add on a credential, but through this program, you could only choose one. And that was one of the languages that I showed as an example. So Spanish, Mandarin, Korean. So through this program, yes, any one of those single subject focused languages, yes, and you can add on later. But you can't do it through our program. But of course, the team will show you and explain to you once you're in the program how you can add on to a credential, because that'll actually make you more marketable as a teacher.
Thank you. The next questions are, so would this mean I will have to apply after that I am on the TESOL program? Now I can apply to this track now?
Right. So no, this credentialing track that I just showed everybody, it's not something that you can apply to separately. You have to be an admitted MAT-TESOL student. So you have the option to do it when you're in the program. You're not required. It's optional. If you plan on becoming a California teacher, this is the track you are going to go through. So you can't apply any earlier. It's not anything separate you can apply to. You have to be an admitted student. We just like to, again, front load all this information right now just to prepare you because of all the requirements I shared with you that entail going into being a California credential teacher. So you have to be enrolled in the program in order to apply.
Okay, thank you. And the next one is I haven't done all my research yet, but I'm curious whether teachers in California public school who are in charge of ESL are required to have a particular credential.
That is a great question. I'd have to ask the team. That I'm not too sure of. They would know a little bit more with the credentialing standards. Actually, next month, I will be co-hosting a webinar with the team that I just talked about right now, Doris and Debbie. They will be joining me on a webinar, and but I can get you that answer if you email me. I will ask somebody from their team to find out the correct answer because I don't want to give you the wrong one.
Yeah, sure. Come to the next section.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, this means no students can guarantee to be accepted to into credential.
Correct. So as I noted in the timeline, they're going to review your application. You have to be in academic good standing, and you have to meet all of those requirements. So if you check off all those requirements, you're in good academic standing. You have good rapport with your classmates, your advisor. They see you as a potential qualified teacher. Then you'll get admitted. Again, if you don't get admitted, that doesn't mean that you're kicked out of the program. No, you're still going to be in the program continuing to get your degree, but you'll be on the non-credential track. That's all.
Thank you, Heidi. And I also have some questions from live streaming platforms, and it's about the application part to apply for the MAT-TESOL program. And one audience asked about, should I have related language or education or English language background for my undergraduate to apply for TESOL program?
Not necessarily. We take a holistic review when reading applications. So we're going to look at everything, your academics, your experiences, your background. Usually it is beneficial to have some sort of experience in the field. Again, it's not a required thing. It's nice because you'll be able to talk about all this in your essays or when you get asked questions in the Kira video interview. Again, it's not required, but it's nice to have because it'll give you more information to talk about. And again, we take a holistic review approach, but it's not required.
Thank you. And also about for the application for the work experience, is it required to apply for the TESOL program?
If you don't have work experience, that's okay. We have a lot of people that are coming straight out of receiving their undergraduate degree, and perhaps maybe they've just worked on campus, or maybe they just had research assistance experience, and that's fine. Some people are coming straight out of college going into grad school. You don't have to have work experience. Again, same as the other question, we take a holistic review approach. Maybe your writing and your potential of being a teacher, it comes off in your essay and your interview responses.
Thank you. And there is a question asked about, because many audience coming to our session today is we do have the mother tongue like Mandarin. So we wonder like if we choose the single subject like Mandarin or other language like Koreans. So what are the course selection or the text selection would be different to arrange to choose depends on my credential or my subject?
No, actually, Cantonese, Mandarin, that's you can get your credential in those languages. So I think the programs office can give you all the other languages that we have to offer, but the ones that you just mentioned there, yes, you can definitely that would be one of the credentials that you can go towards with this preliminary credential track.
Okay, thank you. And we talked about the California and New York states just now, and the audience wonder yes, and New York State and California states we most consider because they are a big market for the second language learners. So when the audience consider like a USC or New York University, do you know any difference or advantages compared with USC TESOL and New York NYU TESOL program?
I haven't done my research, but from what I've heard, California has the most stringent requirements. So I think if you say you go to a program here in California and you go to another state, you probably will just have to do like, I don't know, a course, a test. We have the most stringent requirements. From what I've heard, California it has the most difficult and toughest requirements versus if you go to New York, theirs of course are going to be different. So if I were them, do your research on California, New York. I haven't really done my research with New York, sorry.
Oh, thank you. And yes, and some questions related to New York State and California State is, do you know the tests? Is it are they different? And how about the payment in California's school and New York schools?
Again, I mean, as far as the program goes, here USC, or the tuition you pay per unit. I'm not sure how it is in New York. So here, you know, you're going to have a certain amount that you're going to pay for the program. So if you add on those 4 units, you just add on the price tag to what we go per unit. It's the same cost. You're just adding on more units. I don't know. Again, I don't know what it is in New York. It's probably different state requirements. Sometimes the prices for the testing is different. I believe, I'm trying to see if there's anything I can show you for the cost. Some tests, like here in California, they range anywhere from $100 up to just $300. And that's just for a test in California. So I don't know if it's a bit more expensive in New York. Again, that's something that you'd have to kind of compare and contrast and do your own research.
Thank you. And I see there is the audience also asks about the tuition fee. So this is the reference for you about the cost.
Say that again?
No, about the tuition fee, there is an audience from Zoom also asks the same questions. Yes.
About the tuition cost?
Tuition fee. Tuition.
So
the tuition of the program.
Oh, the total cost of the program. So it's again per unit, it's 2,244. Let me just get you that number correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, so that's why let me cheat and look it up. Okay, so right now the rate of tuition, yes, 2,244 per unit. So the total cost of the program is 53,856 plus fees, and this is without the credential. So if you were to add on the credential, then that's 62,832 plus fees. Tuition and fees, they typically increase every year. So just keep in mind, yeah, tuition goes up every year at USC.
Okay, thank you. And before I move back to the Zoom questions, I have to answer these questions because many audience ask about the social security number. So many audience want to know about if they got how they get the social security number. Is there any guidance before they coming to the master's program? And also after they get the social security number, and can they apply for the job with salary?
So one thing that I've heard from the programs office, and again, I would recommend that you come to the next one in February because you will be hearing from the professionals, because I'm more of the admissions. I deal with more of the admissions part. I'm just here presenting potential things that you can get into with this degree. So if you want to get a social security number, first thing you want to do is get admitted into the program and find a job on campus. So once you find a job on campus, connect with our Office of International Scholars, because the best way to get a social security number that we've seen our students do, again, is to get an on-campus job. And those jobs go quickly. So again, if you get admitted into the fall semester, get a job right away, especially if you know for sure you want to do the credential track. If not, don't even bother with that, because again, it's a lengthy process. You're not guaranteed a job on campus. But again, try getting a job on campus and reach out to our Office of International Scholars, because they'll help you with Social Security. That's one way. That's the only way I know for our potential students to get a Social Security number. And what was the other question?
And the next question is, do you have a record of the passing rate for students to take the credential exam, the passing rate?
Good question. That I don't know. That would be a question that Doris, the director, or Debbie, the field coordinator, would probably know. But if you email me, I'll find out. And yeah, I don't have that passage rate, sorry.
And the next question is, you mentioned that getting additional credentials will require me to get through another program. Does this mean we need to get an additional program such as master's?
No. You can add on as many credentials as you want. So once you have your preliminary credential, you can keep adding on credentials, and you'll just be going through the CTC, which is the California Teaching Credentialing Program. Again, the master's, the programs office will help and guide you in doing that. But with us specifically, you're only going to be choosing one language again. So you can add on to the credential. You don't need to add on a master's. No.
Thank you. And I've got an audience asked about the interview for the application to the MAT-TESOL program. Do you have any tips or suggestions for the applicants to prepare for the interview?
So the interview, actually, they're pre-recorded questions that you are going to answer on the video. Be genuine and authentic. You don't really have to prepare for it. They're questions that I think you should be able to answer because they're hypothetical questions. If you were a teacher, situations, and a lot of times we don't give you the prompt in advance, of course, but they're geared towards our mission. Remember when I went over the slide about our mission statement and how we are all about equity and serving everyone? Usually it's questions surrounding that. So again, it's just to hear how what you're answering in that pre-recorded prompt, does it match with what you produced in your personal statement?
Okay. Thank you. Another question is, audience says, being a certified teacher is as difficult as a lawyer or a doctor. So any instruction or information session I can join to know, such as just now we talked about the timeline to get a credential, to get the test pass, and to get the documents approved and the clearance and apply for the job in the U.S. public schools before the graduation. Is it the additional timeline for the,
Again, I'm giving you all this information early on to prepare you. So yes, once you are admitted into our MAT-TESOL program, you'll have a lot of support. You can ask questions, meet with them personally. They'll have information sessions, again, like this, a little bit more detailed, to cover everything you need to know about being a California credential teacher. Yes, so you'll have that guidance and support once you are admitted into our MAT-TESOL program.
Thank you. And yes, and since about the time, I will take 2 questions for closing up our session today. And it's very interesting that they're coming for the guest speaker's background and for the questions. And one asks about, it is said that mother is the first teacher of child. And I do research for today's speakers has background to consult with marriage and family therapy. What do you think of giving a language learning environment at home instead of going to school, and especially for immigrant family?
Well, that's a very lovely question. I'm an immigrant I came to the United States. My first language was Spanish. I was taught English by watching TV and my teachers. So I think it's very important to have and to learn dual languages. So here, especially in California right now, there is a need for marginalized communities for people and teachers to teach our youth a second language. I think it's important to use once you are a grown person going out into the world. You can utilize it in your job and just spread it around. So I encourage it. I'm a supporter of it. Again, I'm an immigrant myself, and my first language is Spanish, and I basically was taught English going to school and watching TV. And I actually was supposed to be a teacher, but I went a different path, and now I help teachers become teachers and guide them. And I love working in higher ed. So yeah, I'm all for it. Great question.
Thank you. And the last one is, as I see, ID has MA education program. The background is MA educations. Would you give some details between like in the industry, MAT-TESOL program, MA education program, and usually we have on the research that we find the MED program. And do you know the difference, or what is the goals for this kind of compare with all these programs?
So yeah, a Master of Arts degree. Again, I got a Master of Arts degree in education. It's just because I went to a small liberal arts college, Whittier College. The most common one is a Master of Education. So here you would be receiving a Master of Arts in Education, specifically geared towards teaching. So you don't necessarily have to go in teaching. Some people get this degree and then utilize it and go into a different career route. Again, you have options being on the non-credential and the credential track. But to me, a master's is all the same. You're continuing your education to further your expertise, and sometimes you don't have to stay in that realm. You can move on because you're expanding your knowledge and moving on to other things. And all of you definitely want to be teaching in some sort of realm. So whether it be here in the United States or back at your home country, we're here to support it. So hope that answered that.
Thank you. And that's the end for today's session. And we have a great time with audience and with ID and to learn about TESOL program in a professional way. And we do taking one more step to get ready to be a teacher for future. And at this point, we would like to invite ID again to give some words or advice to our audience and also some prospective students or applicants as non-native language educator for future career.
Keep on doing what you're doing. Reach out to me. Here's my email address. I'm here to support you and guide you. Keep in touch. I will help you through the process. And again, like we all said, fight on.
Fight on. Thank you.